Planning your string art design is a really important step to this project. So you're going to use this handout to help you plan out what type of a design you're going to do. Make sure that you start with your name on your handout because these are all going to look very similar. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the steps. So the first design is called radiating lines. It says pick one color. I'm going to start with red. Start at any notch. Use your ruler to create diagonal lines that radiate from your starting point. So here's my one color. Start at any notch. Okay, here's a notch. Use your ruler to create diagonal lines that radiate from your starting point. So here we go. I'm going to radiate. If I want this diagonal line to go to this notch, there's 1, 2, 3. These are all diagonal lines. And these lines are all radiating from one central starting point. So all starting at one notch, diagonal lines going to each other notch. I know sometimes it's kind of hard with the thicker Sharpie or markers, but you'll kind of get the idea. So this is a radiating line. Now it says I could pick a different color and a different notch and go again, and I could do this as many times as I want. So if this was a red string that I started at one notch and sewed out to each individual notch, this is a radiating line. And I could do this a second time with a second color. So I could maybe even do just the opposite. Start at the opposite notch and do a diagonal radiating line, all coming back to the same spot. And this is important to practice because then you'll kind of understand where your string needs to go depending on what type of a pattern or a design that you want to make. So this would be an example of 2 radiating lines, 1 blue string and 1 red string. And you can see the difference that it makes if you do more than one. The spectrum is very similar to the radiating lines, except for we don't do the whole area. So for example, pick any color. Here's green. Start at any notch. Use your ruler. Create a diagonal line from one notch to the next. So I could go here. I know it's tough with the thicker markers. Maybe I would stop there. Pick another color. Maybe go here. And what happens is I'm kind of following that same pattern that I did over here. And I'm kind of rotating and doing different colors, different lines, different patterns. So here, I could start another one. I know it's tough with the rulers and the markers. Just aim for your best. This is just a plan. And maybe you want to do, 4 or 5 strings each. And I'm just going to keep rotating. Maybe I'll try a red this time. And you can kind of see that what happens is you get this kind of really cool spectrum pattern with all of these radiating colors. And you could practice doing more or less strings. The rotating squares is a really fun one, but it can get tricky. If you're going to pick a color, start at any notch, use a ruler to create diagonal lines, so just like these ones, but this has 3 spaces from your starting point. And you're going to continue to draw a diagonal line 3 spaces until you've created a square. So let's practice that. So I'm going to start with an orange, pick any color, start at any notch. I'm going to start here. use your ruler to draw a diagonal line 3 spaces from your starting point. So if I'm starting here, 1, 2, 3, right here is where I'm going to go. I want 3 spaces in between. Okay. Continue to draw a diagonal line 3 spaces until you have created a square. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. There we go. 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. One, 2, 3 spaces in between. This last line should look like a square. Now this alone doesn't look very cool, but if we continue this, so if I now start here, this is now my starting point. 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. And 1, 2, 3 spaces in between. I've now got 2 squares layered right on top of each other, and I could continue going over and over and over until I have multiple squares rotating and layered on top of each other. The last 2 spaces are for you to create your own design. So once you've practiced the 3 here, I want you to just come up with some of your own designs. The only criteria is that wherever you start has to be on a notch, because this is where there are going to be holes in our project. So wherever you start, there has to be on a notch. And wherever you end has to be on a notch. So I could start here to here. Some people might want to experiment with what a star might look like. Okay, some people might want to experiment with maybe a triangle shape. So just come up with your own designs on these examples here. And remember, planning is a very important step.